Does anybody here have a favorite food? Favorite food? Anyone? Maybe it's like spaghetti and meatballs. What's your favorite food? He needs to say, it's pizza? Is pizza? Mine is pizza too. That's crazy. I'm sure that I'm not the only one who loves pizza. I'm crazy about pizza, you guys. But I have a challenge, and that is that growing up, I was the youngest sibling. And when you are the youngest sibling, you got to grow up a little scrappy. Isn't that right? Do we have any other lastborns here today, youngest siblings? You get it. You get it. Mealtime, specifically pizza night, okay? Pizza night is not a night of festivities. Pizza night is a battlefield where you are fighting tooth and nail to try and consume more cheese-covered bread than your older siblings. And at least that's what the experience was in my house. But my brother was a machine. I still don't understand how my brother eats the way that my brother eats. He is about 6 inches taller than me and just a very large human. And I could never keep up with him eating when we were growing up. And so on nights like pizza night, my brother, it was crazy. It would be like from the time that dinner ended till breakfast the next day, all of the leftover pizza would disappear. That sometime between those hours of like 7 p.m. and 8 a.m., my brother would eat all of the remaining pizza. And so as the last-born sibling, obviously I couldn't out-eat my brother, and so I had to learn to outthink my brother, okay? And so this is what I would do. For the sake of pizza, to get this food that I wanted so badly, I would take the pizza and I would hide it in the vegetable drawer. And I would cover it with like lettuce and tomatoes and carrots, because I knew if there was one place that my brother was not going, it was in there. And I think sometimes we go to crazy lengths for the foods that we love. That we'll do crazy things, we'll pay crazy prices, we'll go to ridiculous restaurants, all for the foods that we love the most. And there is no one that I know in my life who will go to further lengths for the foods that he loves than a good friend of mine, Mr. Carl Barkley, okay? This is my dog, Carl. I talk about him a lot, but I finally shared a picture with you guys. This is him waiting for his food so sweetly. Look how good he is. Look at those eyes. How do you not just give him the world? I am weirdly obsessed with my dog. This is him on Fridays. There's no one else working in the office except for like us just getting ready for youth, so I sneak him in. He hangs out with me. He's my little office buddy on Fridays. But this is Carl. I love Carl, and Carl loves me. But there is something that Carl loves more than he loves me. And that, my friends, is salami. My dog is absolutely crazy about salami. I don't know if you have a dog, but they just like know the sound of the cheese drawer where you keep like all your deli meats and stuff. He knows that sound and he will be there in an instant. But Carl loves salami, and as much as I love Carl, I love spending time with Carl. If you own a dog here today, then you know that sometimes they are the most annoying creature that you could ever have in your home. And you're like, why did I buy you? I paid money for you. But Carl was having one of those days. And this was like back in the days when like the work from home stuff and all that kind of thing. So I had these tasks I was trying to get done on my laptop at home, and Carl is just bugging me and bugging me. He's barking and he's like dropping his ball in my lap and he's wanting to play and he's just like being an obnoxious dog. And so finally I get this brilliant idea, okay? So knowing that Carl loves salami, I go and get this massive salad bowl that we have. Like, you know the weirdly large salad bowls that are too big for your kitchen table, but you put them on the kitchen table anyways, and then you have no room for anything else on the table except for this massive salad bowl. Anyways, I took one of those bowls and I scattered a whole bunch of pieces of salami on the bottom of it. And then I took water and I filled this bowl up with water. And I had this vision in my mind of this little contraption for Carl of where he's gonna like know the salami is at the bottom of the bowl and he's gonna like dunk his head. You know, kind of like how at Thanksgiving you like dunk for apples, that kind of thing. He's gonna have to dunk his head in the water to get the salami, and he's gonna have to work for it, and it's gonna keep him occupied so that I can do the things that I need to do. And so I set up this awesome contraption, my little bowl of salami water, and I set it over in the bathroom, and I let Carl kind of just do his thing, and then I go back to work. And I spent about 30 minutes working until finally I'm like, I should probably go check on him and just like make sure this is all going well. And I walk back into the bathroom, and sure enough, Carl has gotten his salami. He just has not gotten it the way I expected him to. he managed to get his salami, but it wasn't through dunking his head in the water. Carl went on to drink his way through the entire bowl of water. That, I mean, like, a smarter dog probably would have just tipped the bowl over. Not Carl. Not Carl. He was a dog on a mission, all right? He had one single focus, and that was the salami at the bottom of the water bowl. I kid you not, it was probably about like 4 liters of water, like a milk jug's worth of water that this dog drank his way through. And I walk into the bathroom, and Carl is lying on his side like an inflated water balloon. And he's a well-trained dog. He doesn't have accidents in the house. He's good about that kind of thing, but he just couldn't handle it. And as he's laying there, can barely even like get himself off the ground, he just starts peeing, and he looks at me with literally these eyes right here, just those eyes looking at me as he's peeing and peeing. 2 minutes and 30-second pee. It was a 2-minute and 30-second pee. We had to time it because it was going on so long. But Carl suffered. He got his salami, but he suffered his way through it. And it got me thinking this week of, why did Carl do that? Was he thirsty? Does he just really like water? Did he get one sip of that water and he's like, ooh, salami water. It's like soup, but better. Is that why Carl drank his way through this water? No, Carl didn't drink the water because he was thirsty. I want to get at something for you here today. Carl drank the water not for the sake of the water. Carl drank the water for the sake of salami. Carl drank the water not because he wanted the water, but because he wanted what was on the other side. Now, I'm saying that today because I believe that in a similar way, we all have our own salami. That for Carl, he had something on the other side of the water bowl that was leading, guiding, and motivating his actions. Salami was his motivation. And so my question to you today, CLC, is what is your salami? That what is the thing that is leading and guiding the decisions and the actions that we're making on a daily basis? You know, for example, some of us are maybe really into fitness. I don't think that anybody just works out for the sake of working out. That maybe you work out because you enjoy the process of it. Maybe you go for a run because you want to live a healthy, active lifestyle. Or maybe you just have a winter vacation coming up and you're just like dedicated to getting beach shredded. And then as soon as that's done, it's pizza time, baby, right? We're all motivated by something. That our actions don't live in isolation. Our actions are attached to a motivation. That every response has a reason. Why do we do the things that we do? I have never met someone more motivated than a university student at 11:30 p.m. who has an assignment due at midnight, right? There is no more motivated creature on the earth than that university student. Why? They've got a motivation. They have something on the other side of the water bowl that is leading and guiding their actions. Now, I don't know about you, but here's the reality of the situation is that while I understand that our actions have motivations, I don't want to be motivated by just anything. That when I look at the grand context of my life, I don't want the main motivating factor to be my upcoming winter vacations. I don't want the main motivating factor of my life to be midnight deadlines looming over my head. I don't want the main motivating factor of my life to be salami at the bottom of a water bowl. I want my life to look like Jesus's. That when I look at like the grand picture beyond how much money I make or what kind of career I create or what my family looks like, when I look at the grand scheme of my life, I just want it to look like Jesus's. And so if my life is going to look like the life of Jesus, then that means that I have to allow my life to be motivated by the things that motivated him. And so the question for you today is, what was Jesus motivated by? What were the motivating factors for Jesus that led, guided, and directed his decisions? That in the life of Jesus, what was the salami at the bottom of the water bowl? Check this out. In Matthew chapter 9, we find this verse. And to give you a little bit of context, in this verse, Jesus has just discovered that his cousin John, the guy who had gone out preaching and teaching before Jesus began his ministry, preparing the way for him, preparing a way in the wilderness, had just been beheaded by King Herod. And this news is just now reaching Jesus. He's learning of his cousin's death, and not just a death, but a horrible, gruesome death. And he receives this information and he leaves the city, that he goes to find a quiet place to grieve. He's on his way to these remote fields and hills where he's just taking time to process everything that's happened and grieve the life of his cousin. And in the midst of this multitude of people follows him. And it says it right here that when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion, because they were weary and scattered like sheep, having no shepherd. It then goes on to say that he healed their sick. And of course, you may know the miracle in which he multiplies the bread and the fish. We see these incredible miracles occur in Jesus' ministry, but where does it all begin? He was moved with compassion. If we're looking at the things that motivating Jesus, then we have to see compassion. I'm not saying that compassion was the sole motivator of Jesus' life, that it was the only thing leading and guiding his decisions and his actions, but we have 5 miracles recorded in the gospel that are done not to make his name known, not because somebody asked, not for recognition or renown, but 5 miracles in which Jesus performs them for the sole reason and the reason alone of that he was moved with compassion. And so if our lives are going to look like the life of Jesus, then we ought to live motivated by compassion. And so what is compassion? What does compassion look like in our lives? If you look up that word, being like moved by compassion in the Greek translations, it comes from this word called splenchitsomai. I don't know if I said that right. You can auto-correct me later, but splenchitsomai. And what this word would refer to was, it was actually not an emotional feeling. It was a physical reaction. That idea of compassion that they're talking about in this scripture, it was defined as being moved from the inward parts where tender mercies, affections, and feelings originate. That essentially, it was like a gut-wrenching feeling where you would see something and it would move you so deeply that you would feel it in your bowels. That this is what Jesus was talking about. This is what Jesus was experiencing. What was Jesus motivated? He was motivated by compassion. And I think that it's in what compassion does that reveals what compassion is. See, compassion was not just something that Jesus felt. Compassion was not just something that went through Jesus' head. Compassion was something that he was moved by. What does this say about compassion? Compassion is not an emotion. Compassion is an action. Compassion is an action in the life of his believers. Compassion is not just something that we do with our hands. Compassion is the connection of our heart to our hands. That it's not just a thought going through our heads or a feeling that we have for somebody. Compassion is an action. It wasn't just something that Jesus felt. Compassion was something that he was moved by. And compassion is more than that. Check this out. In Colossians 3:12, it says this, that therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion. What does compassion look like in the lives of a believer? I was in Edmonton 2 weeks ago. We went up for the Heritage Classic, the outdoor game between the Flames and the Oilers. And we were there with some friends of ours. And one of the guys, he made this comparison of compassion to a jersey, like a hockey jersey. And I thought that it was such like a cool comparison to make. What does it mean to clothe yourself with compassion? See, when I was walking through the hallways of that Edmonton arena, I didn't have to look for the missing teeth and the BO and the like stinky breath to know who the Edmonton Oilers fans were, right? Come on. I also didn't have to look for the heartbreak and the rejection and just like the shame in your team to know who the Flames fans were. So it kind of goes both ways. I knew who was cheering for what team. Why? Because of what symbol they were wearing on their chests. That when I was wearing my red and yellow through the hallways of that arena, every person that I walked by knew exactly what team I was playing for. I wasn't playing, watching, cheering for. Why? Because of my jersey. What is compassion? Compassion is our jersey. Compassion, when we clothe ourselves with compassion, what we're doing is we're revealing to the world the team that we're playing for. Is that we're saying to the world that, yes, I am in the world, but I am not of the world. That when we clothe ourselves with compassion, what is compassion? Compassion is that symbol on my chest saying, this is my team. High or dry, whether Zadorov wants a trade or not, I don't care. This is my team. I'm rooting for them, even when they're losing. It's tough being a Flames fan right now, you guys. But high or low, this is my team. This is the jersey that I wear on my chest. That's what compassion is. Compassion is the jersey that we wear upon our chest to tell the world whose team we're playing for. And so where does this kind of compassion originate from? See, before Jesus was moved with compassion, something else happened. That before he was moved, what does it say? He was moved, but before that, it says that when he saw the multitudes. Compassion leads us to move, but it begins with seeing. What is compassion? Compassion does not exist without seeing the needs of people. That we can't reach to meet the needs of people unless we allow ourselves to see the needs of people. And I wonder sometimes if our problem in our society is not that we don't have a desire to show compassion. I wonder sometimes if it's just that we're so distracted that we don't see the need for compassion. That we live our lives so focused on the thing we have in our hand that we don't see the things that are going on around us. It is so much easier to have compassion at an arm's length. To post something on Instagram or post something on Facebook. To post a story or whatever. Thoughts and prayers are with you. Why? Because it doesn't cost us anything. But is that actually what compassion looks like? That's not the kind of compassion that Jesus showed. What did Jesus do? He saw the people who were in his midst. And what did it do? It inconvenienced him. See, here's the thing about compassion is that compassion is not convenient. We see that in Jesus' followers, Peter and John. This is after Jesus has ascended into heaven. He's filled his followers with the Holy Spirit. And he's sending them out to go forth and preach the good news. And this is just at the beginning of their ministry. And Peter and John, they're on their way to the temple one day to worship. It says that while they're on their way at about 3 in the afternoon, they saw a man who was lame from birth being carried to the temple gate called Beautiful, where he was put every day to beg from those going into the temple courts. And we saw Peter and John about to enter. He asked them for money. And Peter looked straight at him, as did John. And he said to him, "Look at us." So this man gave them his attention, expecting to receive something from them. And Peter responds to him. You may know the story. "Silver and gold I do not have, but what I do I give to you. In the name of Jesus, rise up and walk." And they take this man by the hand and they raise him to his feet. And immediately his legs are healed, and this guy goes singing and jumping and dancing into the temple. And what goes on to occur is that this space is created for Peter and John to get up and preach and share the goodness in the gospel of Christ. But here's the crazy thing about this story is that that was not their plan on their way to the temple that day. That they were going to the temple to worship. That they had a plan. They had an idea in their mind of what their day looked like. I don't know about you guys. I hate deterring from the plan. I was mentioning this in the first service. I hate Costco, mostly, because when I go to Costco, I hate going to Costco with people, okay? Because when I go to Costco, I know what I need from Costco, right? I need ground beef and some chicken and like maybe a couple of like frozen berries. There's like some good samples, and then I'm out, right? It's like you have the clear loop, and you're done. Going to Costco with Laura is an adventure. It's an experience, right? That you have a grocery list, but it grows in every aisle that you walk through, right? That you walk through the clothing section and you just have to take a peek at these things. And then, oh, look, they added in, I don't know, lawn furniture. Why do we need lawn? We have lawn furniture, Laura. Well, we can still look at it. That chair looks comfy. What if we sit in that chair? We have chairs, Laura. We have this stuff. But we have to look at it. Why? No, I'm asking genuinely why. It's inconvenient, right? And I think sometimes we live our lives the way I do on my way to Costco. We have a plan in mind. What were Peter and John going to do? They were going to the temple to worship. And if that is all that they had done, they would have missed out on a miracle in their midst. Faith produced the miracle, but compassion caused them to stop. Faith produced the miracle, but it was what they saw that caused them to stop. He stopped and he looked straight at him. Compassion is an interruption. Compassion is inconvenient. Very rarely does compassion go according to the plans that we make for it. What is compassion? Compassion is not convenient. I think about the volunteers who got up early to serve this house today, to get this room ready. The worship team who practiced every evening this week for hours on end, I'm sure, right, team? Just hours upon hours of practice every single night, late into the evening, right, team? Anyways, no, you guys are amazing. This is the best worship. Getting up early to serve the church, to change garbages, to serve coffee, to prep little seat cards in the back of the seat so that it's nice and welcoming when people come in. Guess what? That's inconvenient. Our young adults who take every single Friday night and they don't go hang out with their friends. They don't go party. They don't go out to concerts. They don't go out to games. They come here and hang out with stinky teenagers and pour into the next generation. Guess what that is for those people? That's an inconvenience. That all of our Connect Group leaders who open up their home on a weekly basis and have bags and bags of half-eaten sour cream and onion chips sitting in their pantry. I don't know why people keep bringing sour cream and onion chips. Just one bag of dill pickle, please. Spicy ketchup, Miss Vicky's. It's the ultimate chip, I promise. You won't regret it if you try it. It's at Costco. Don't get distracted, though, on your way there. Guess what? Opening up your home to a bunch of strangers is not convenient. Pastor Anthony and Madeline flying on little tiny bush planes, landing on dirt runways to go and preach the gospel in remote, out of nowhere places all across the globe is not convenient. And yet this is what we do. Why? Because what is on the other side of the water bowl? What is on the other side of this mission? What are we being motivated by? What are we being led by? It's not recognition. It's not about getting our name in lights. It's not about gaining followers online. Why do we do the things that we do? Why do we serve when no one's watching? Why do we give when no one's looking? Why do we do the things we do? Because we are moved not by recognition, not by renown, not by what we're going to get out of it. We are moved by compassion. We have seen the needs of the people in our lives, and we're receiving this mission and doing something about it. That we're allowing the needs of the people around us to break our hearts and let that need be something that we don't just feel, but spurs us into action. This is what we're led by for the sake of Salami. This is compassion. It starts with seeing people. It starts with allowing ourselves to be inconvenienced. And what effect does compassion have? Check this out. In Proverbs chapter 3, verse 3-4, it says this: "Let not mercy and truth forsake you. Bind them around." Oh, hey Siri, my bad. I don't know how Siri picked that up. "Bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart, and in doing so, you will find favor and high esteem in the sight of God and man." That what does mercy and truth do? What does showing compassion to the people of the world do? It prepares a way for you. It paves the way. I think about it like this. Does anyone here garden? That was no hands. That was crazy. Clearly we live in the city. A net. We got a net. We got Steven Gardens. Steven shared some of his carrots with us the other day. It was amazing. He's a really good gardener. But not that I know anything about gardening, but hypothetically speaking, from my assumptions about gardening, please correct me if I'm wrong, Annette, or don't. You don't have to correct me if I'm wrong, actually. Just let me live in my fantasy. This is how gardening works, right? I don't just take a bunch of seeds and just start throwing them on the ground, right? Because that ground is cold and that ground is hard. And if those seeds fall, they're going to die where they fell. That instead, what we do first is we churn that soil up. That we prepare that soil. That we prepare the ground, and then we start planting our seeds. That we prepare the soil to receive the seed that we're laying. Now, in what we do on Sunday mornings, what we do on Friday nights, what we do on Sunday nights, what we do in connect groups, that's a lot of planting seeds. It's planting seeds in our community, throwing a big Halloween party for a bunch of kids. What does that do? That plants a seed in our community. But what does compassion do? Compassion primes the soil of people's hearts. That if it's one thing, if we just start going and preaching Jesus at people, what kind of soil is that going to land on if we haven't primed that soil first? I think about somebody like my mom. If you've ever met my mom is the kind of person who's kind of just everybody's mom. When I was growing up, my house was always the house that people would hang out at because I don't think it was me. I think it was my mom. She would just like keep feeding my friends. And there are moments in my life where I've wondered, are my friends or are my friends friends with me so they can be friends with my mom? I'm not 100% confident about this. But my mom for 30 years worked at RBC. And she worked as a bank teller. And just last year, she retired. And super excited for her, kind of getting to enter the next chapter, the next season of life. And when she retired, she came home that day, and she has her SUV, and you know when you're going camping and you're packed like to the roof with stuff? She was packed to the roof of her SUV with gift bags and presents and chocolates and gift cards, like more than I could count, more than I could number. There were like dozens upon dozens of gifts. And I'm like, aren't you a bank teller? Like, where are these coming from? And the crazy thing, it wasn't from the people she worked with, that all these things were from the people that she served. And I look at my mom, and I was thinking about it this week. Why did my mom leave such a lasting impact on people? That to this day, she'll get phone calls from the people that she served, being like, will you pray for me about this? Like, hey, my son is going through this at school. Would you just pray for him right now? Still, she's in retirement. She still gets phone calls about things like this. And I was thinking, is that just because she was really good at her job? And she was a good bank teller, but is that what left such a lasting impact on the people around her? That she just really knew her banking? She could just really set an account up super, super well. Just look at the way that woman deposits a check. That's crazy. We gotta get her some chocolates. No. See, my mom never had a microphone, and she never had a stage. But every morning that she woke up, she clothed herself with compassion. And I know my mom, and I know that every person who walked through the doors of that bank, she saw them. And she didn't just see them to serve their financial needs. She went into that workspace ready to serve their spiritual needs. And when people would walk in with head downcast, looking weary, looking heavy, my mom would just speak into that situation. As she would just start priming that soil with compassion. All just beginning with seeing the needs of the people around her. And letting her motivation of each workday being not just getting a paycheck at the end of the day, but letting her motivation be to see the needs of the people in her life and allow them to break her heart. And in doing so, I believe that my mom touched more people in her circle of work than many people have done on a platform with a microphone. Why? Because compassion was her platform. You have a platform. Moms, your minivan is your platform. Open up those doors. Welcome your kids' friends in. Your living room is your platform. Welcome people into your home. You're serving on a Sunday, that is your platform. greeting someone at the front door with genuine compassion, that is your platform. Your coworkers, that is your platform. We all have a platform if we have compassion. What are we working towards? What is guiding us? It's compassion. And as we get ready to close today, there's one more thing I just want to share with you. It's a simple question of how do we cultivate compassion? And I think that if everything that I talked about today you forget, remember this one thing. Because I really believe that if we figure out this one thing, the rest of it just kind of falls into line. That the rest of it, it just sort of like comes into place when we figure this piece out. How do we cultivate compassion? I don't think that compassion is something that we just stir up within ourselves. I think compassion is something that we receive. Check this out. We talked about Peter and John earlier, the two disciples of Christ, who go and they see this incredible miracle happen around them because they allowed themselves to be inconvenienced with compassion. But before that, Jesus gives Peter two commands. 2 times, Jesus gives Peter an explicit command. The first time he says to him, this is in their very first interaction with one another. And one of the cool things is that both of their interactions happen at the same place. Like both of these two interactions. They happen at the Sea of Galilee. And the first time, this is the very beginning of Jesus' ministry, he says to Peter, "Follow me, and I will make you a fisher of men." That what does Jesus call Peter to do? He calls him to be a fisher of men. Go out, cast your nets, gather people, reach people, see their needs, let them break your heart. And the second interaction is at the very end of Jesus' ministry. This is after the crucifixion, after he has risen from the dead, and it says this, that when they'd finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" And he said to him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." And he said to him, "Feed my lambs." 2 times, Jesus gives Peter a call to compassion. Be a fisher of men and feed my sheep. Be a man of the people. See their needs. Let them break your heart. Be a fisher of men and feed my sheep. But before each command, Jesus offers a prerequisite. At the first time, what does he say before he calls him to fish? He calls him to follow. And the second time, before he calls him to feed, what does he ask him? Do you love me? That what was Jesus doing? Before sending Peter out, he was first pulling Peter in. I don't know if we can properly show love to the world until we've experienced the love of Christ. That's where it comes from. That is the core, that is the foundation of it all, that before we fish, we have to learn how to follow. And before we feed, we have to know how to love. That before Jesus sent him out, he first pulled him in. I wonder sometimes if the reason that our hearts grow calloused, if the reason that our hearts grow cold, I wonder sometimes if the reason why we go into church and we feel critical of the pastor, or we feel critical of the church, or we feel critical of this spiritual authority or that spiritual authority is not because of something that they've done, but rather because we've disconnected our hearts from our hands. And that we've spent more time doing things for God that we have forgotten the simple blessing of first off being with him. That is the foundation of it all. Compassion is not just an action of the hands. It is the connection of the heart to the hands. And so if you're feeling cold and you're feeling callous today, I get it. I think there's seasons in our lives where we just feel maybe a little bit jaded towards society, a little bit pessimistic inside. And so if you're here and you feel drained, you feel tired, you feel hard of heart, I want to encourage you in this one thing. Return to your first love. Loving people begins with loving God. In the midst of all of our doing things for God, are we taking the time to simply be with God? It says this in Ezekiel 36:26, that I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. That I will take the heart of stone out of your flesh and I will give you a heart of flesh. There's a promise of a new heart for you today. If you've never received Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, I want you to know that the nature of our God is not anger and malice towards you. That he is not pouring guilt on shame upon his people. But his arms are open and the spirit of the bride says, come.